What's up guys, it's Mantis here, and have you ever just been wanting something good to happen for once? I mean, I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but don't you just wish something good would happen? And yes, good things happen all the time, but maybe for the Fallout franchise, maybe something just overall unobjectively good would happen. Well, that's what this video is about. I am 1000% positive that I am not alone when thinking that Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, respectively, need remasters moving into the future. And I'm not just talking about re-releases, I'm not just talking about gussying up the games and putting them back out on Steam or something like that. I'm talking about an actual Fallout, classic Fallout game remaster, and it could go a variety of ways. On one path of this forked road, we could take the classic Fallout games, Fallout and Fallout 2, and put them into the modern engine of the Fallout games. We're talking Fallout 4 or above, which would be fantastic. These stories and events and characters would live tremendously in the modern era of the Fallout series. People not experienced with the classic stories would more than likely flock to a remaster of those so that they can experience them for themselves. And people who had already had a lot of experience or even some experience with those classic stories and settings would love to come back and experience those fully realized in the modern era. The other path that we can take on this road is paved with the idea that we could take perhaps Fallout and Fallout 2, keep the isometric appeal, and make them kind of look the way Wasteland 3 does now. Wasteland 3 maintains an isometric appeal, still looks like a modern game, and plays fantastically. But when I say that there should be a remaster, if we do go this route, it should be just as voiced as if we would have went the modern route. Wasteland 3 has voices for everybody, and if they don't have anything to say, you don't open dialogue with them, they just say something to you like, you know, talking little text above their head, but it's still voiced. And that is something that would have to maintain if we went this route with the Fallout games and remastering them. We would have to take even the characters that didn't have voices in Fallout and Fallout 2 and record the things that they said, or at least pick and choose what to include in the remaster. A lot of people would say we already have mods coming out that promise to do the same things, even with games past Fallout and Fallout 2, like Fallout 3 and New Vegas being remastered into the Fallout 4 engine through mods. And I agree. We also have mods like that for Fallout 2 and probably for Fallout 1 as well. I've seen these around. And yeah, I agree. It's great to see people taking the time, taking their actual time, which is super precious, and being like, oh, hey, I'm going to try to remaster these games because I care about them so much and I want to see them realized in this world. But in reality, a lot of these mods work 10 years, 15 years, and never really see the light of day. And I'm not trying to point to any one team here. This is a common issue with a lot of these bigger mods in the Bethesda community. They never really end up coming to fruition. And that's fine. Some of these projects are a bit more than people think they're going to be once they start them, and then they get overwhelmed and the publicity starts up and people want to see it, and then things change. People move away from each other. Stuff kind of deteriorates. No fault to any one person. But then now you have a situation where a lot of people are expecting this giant crazy mod that everybody really wants to see, and unfortunately you're not able to deliver. We see that a lot with the modding community, but that's not something we would see if Bethesda put a team on remastering these two games, because they're paid to be there. They're guaranteed that security of this is their job, so they can dedicate a ton of time to it, all of their time to it, and still maintain their lifestyle. And that's something that's really important, and I think that's a reason why, yes, modding has been good and it's been really cool to see what people's ideas are and what they're trying to bring into the world, but without that backing of like a company to guarantee, oh hey, we're working on this and it's going to be massively released and everybody can just get it and it's a full-blown game, just download it, maybe even Fallout 1 and 2 together. But if you were to properly remaster these games, they would be hours, they'd be giant games. So it would be really interesting and amazing to see Bethesda either back these modders and try to see this come to fruition with support from Bethesda if they don't want to dedicate actual teams to it, or them actually taking Fallout 1 and 2 and doing something with it instead of just releasing it on Steam and kind of censoring it with patches and maybe making it a bit more accessible, but it's not really anything new. You can now play it in, 1080p, but it isn't like you can use upscaling and things like that. But why not just remaster the game and be able to experience these wonderful stories that Bethesda themselves loved and adored and wanted to capture the magic of so bad when they got the series, because they were fans of the games to begin with. That's why they got the Fallout franchise, and that's why we have Fallout games today, because they loved those first two games, at least Todd Howard and the people who acquired the license, and they wanted to see that story continue. So why not remaster the story you love so much? This may seem like a far-fetched concept. Todd Howard himself has expressed that he's not really interested in remastering games and wants to focus on moving forward. But it isn't impossible. It's not something that we might not ever see. It's not something that is totally off the table. Anything can happen, especially in something like the entertainment industry or even in the gaming industry. Bigger and crazier things have happened. Now, Todd has also expressed that he wouldn't want another company working on Fallout again, that they would rather just take the reins moving forward. But I could see them moving this to a different studio, because it isn't somebody creating a new Fallout story and making whatever, it's somebody recreating the Fallout games under their guise. So it wouldn't even be impossible for them to be like, hey, how about you over there? People want to see a Fallout remaster. We'll publish it. You develop it with with us overseeing it. I don't see that being totally impossible. Is it improbable? Absolutely. It doesn't seem like something that's going to happen, but I just feel like, wouldn't it be nice if it did? Because these stories, like I said, the story of Fallout 1 is the bleakest in the entire series, and I have a video about that where I go over it in detail. But there's no happy endings in Fallout. There's no rose-tinted glasses when you're walking through the wasteland and being like, oh yeah, this was a great time, this was this. It is a brutal, bleak wasteland, and to see that story realized in the newer, more modern age engine and the graphics, and being in that first person mode to really get immersed into that world would truly be fantastic. And Fallout 2's epic quest of going through and getting the Gek and battling the Enclave and Frank Horgan, all of these things just would tremendously be amazing inside of the modern day game engine. It's just unfortunate that nobody seems to be wanting to put any effort into that when it comes to the people who could make those decisions. I have heard people say that it's probably about the money. They make a ton of money doing the things that they're doing now, so why would they put resources towards remastering classic Fallout games when they're not even sure that everybody would enjoy those and want to get into them? Well, I'm pretty sure that everybody who is into Fallout and wants to experience those stories, well, even if they didn't, if they just thought, oh, I can actually play those, and a lot of people that I've talked to are completely put off by the isometric view. And in a video that I made not too long ago where I ranked every Fallout game, I put Fallout 1 pretty low on the list because of these reasons. The UI has aged terribly. When you're playing games in 2020 and you go back to play Fallout and Fallout 2, the UI is terrible and archaic. The game can feel clunky and unapproachable. And this is from people who, don't have any dogs in the race. They're just, experiencing this game for the first time. So I took those factors into consideration when I was actually building a list that I was trying to take nostalgia bias out of. And I got a lot of pushback because of that list, because of some of the placements of those. But I was honestly trying to say, yeah, Fallout 2 still, it holds up because of its story and things like that. But it's silly to think that these newer games aren't better games, gameplay wise. You got to take everything into consideration. There's a radio you can listen to, there's gameplay. Even if it doesn't feel more like Fallout to you, like Fallout 4 or something like that, there's gameplay factors that just kind of put it over the list when it comes to the classic Fallout games. And I want to move those classic Fallout games into that engine so that you would see the best Fallout games in the world. Because if you were to play Fallout 2 on Fallout 4's engine, I can guarantee legitimately that 90% of the fan base, Fallout 2 would be their favorite Fallout game of all time. So I stand completely on the side of the argument that they would make a ton of money if they remastered the first two Fallout games. A ton of money. They would get a ton of money from the people who are already fans of Fallout, and they would get a bunch of money from people who hadn't even played those first two games before, but they're like, damn, I got into the series at Fallout 3 or Fallout 4 or New Vegas or even 76, and now I can play those games in a world that I can actually be immersed in, things like, because a lot of people who haven't played them before are really off put by the way that they are. The isometric thing totally kills it for them. The turn-based combat is a huge problem for a lot of people, and if you were to jump out of that and take those settings and characters, move them over here, so many people would be immediately interested in playing it. So many people. And when it comes to remastering these things, I mean an actual remaster. I don't just mean making the graphics look better. I mean really overhauling this game and bringing it into the modern era and taking Fallout and Fallout 2 into these new game engines or something along those lines. I can cite the new Tony Hawk 1 and 2 remake that they made. It's not just a remaster, they've completely rehauled those entire games, made some of the physics still possible from the older games that you didn't have when they previously came out, added online capabilities, and some of the features that they added, the ranked stuff and all the little challenges and the way everything looks, it comes off as a very nice package and very enjoyable. The new things that are added, like they have a classic soundtrack, but they also have new parts of the soundtrack in, which I believe that the Tony Hawk soundtrack is just as important of a character as the levels or the skateboarders or anything in those games. And so them adding to it is risky. But I think it paid off because the songs that they picked seem to work really well. It's things like that that make remasters stand out. When you can add things to them, make them better, make improvements on the things that weren't there before, or the things that were there before and make them better, and just use nowadays ideas and technology to really make those games stand out, pop, and immerse people again and let them fall in love with those games again. But that's just about going to do it. It's just very obvious to me that we need to see remasters of these classic games. Some people say, hey, some things need to just stay classic. Some things need to just not be rebooted or remastered, and I completely agree with that 100%. But this is not one of those instances. I played those games when they came out in the late 90s, and I fell in love with them. I was completely immersed, and that nostalgia is what makes me think they're such good games. So I continue to think that they're good games. But when people who are not familiar with them, 9 times out of 10, they feel off-put by them. Now, I've talked to people who had never played them before, jumped into them even as early as this or late as this year, and everybody, they're like, yeah, they were good. So it's not impossible for somebody to think, hey, this is good without playing it, way back in the day. But I'm just saying, it would be amazing. It would truly, truly be some of the best Fallout experiences anybody could ever hope to have. But, like I said, that's going to do it. So I want to thank you for watching my video about how we need to badly remaster these games. I'm pretty sure we're all on the same page with this. I just needed to rant this out. It needs to be a thing. But I want to thank my patrons and YouTube channel members, and a special thanks to my biggest supporters, Kim Jong-un, JP Rivera, Fireflare, Primark Mustard, Edgy, Bill Scott Sheets, Thomas, Papa Swanson, Billy Joe Jim Bob, and TX Blue 240. Thank you guys for your continued support. You are making all of this possible, and I thank you very much. So, I hope to catch you on the next one. It has been Mantis.
I gotta testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly. For the day you die, you gon' touch the sky. You gon' touch the sky, baby girl. Testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly. For the day you die, you gon' touch